All right, thank you, Aiga. I wanted to start our discussion by talking about really the topic of the discussion. So how have really in these last couple of years, let's put it 5 to 10, cyber threats evolved, and has AI played any part in it? Currently talking about threats, yeah. We can go with Michael first.
So everybody's able to hear me, right? This works? Perfect. So I think what we can see, and I represent an NGO here, is definitely an increase in the volume of attacks, the level of sophistication of attacks as well, but it's questionable whether this is all related truly to artificial intelligence, and I personally think that's not the case. Sure, you're seeing how artificial intelligence is used specifically using deepfakes in order to assist with social engineering. Artificial intelligence is used in existing ways, machine learning, to do better target reconnaissance and all of that stuff. But generally speaking, I see a lot of the same things, just done quicker or better.
Yeah. We in the field certainly see some automation happening on the attacker side, which is why I think the attacks come in quicker. Also, geopolitically here in this region, we did see a spike, and it still hasn't really gone down to the previous levels at the end of 2021, before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So we have to be careful, and we have to be on the lookout. And one more thing that hasn't really changed. So the scale of attacks has changed, but the attacks themselves have not really evolved that much. One other thing is that the companies are still not really ready for them, I think.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, the biggest observation is that we see, like, there could be interesting advanced attacks, but they are not being used because they are not really necessary for the attackers, because the bottleneck is not capability and opportunities. The bottleneck is their, how to say, motivation and workforce on how to, like, monetize their attacks. Like, why use complicated methods if the old methods still work?
I think it was the dot-com boom back more than 20 years ago now, when the last big change happened to attacks. You know, the time before that was fun. Those were fun attacks. You didn't have to monetize it. You know, you screw someone's email server and you get street cred. You don't need to get money. But after dot-com boom, it's all about money, and it's still there.
I think something worth mentioning is just a few days ago, a so-called phishing as a service business got popped by Europol. They were having 2,000 clients and offering them phishing as a service for 250 euros a month. So one thing that people don't understand really, I think, is how much cybercrime is nowadays a mature industry. Whether you have literally customer support teams, marketing people working in there, and they're delivering very mature services, thus enabling people that probably by themselves would have never been able to conduct cyber operations to do so. And that increases the volume even further.
Yeah. And if we look at the applications of machine learning methods for crime, then we mostly see them used not for cyber attacks, but for various extortion and scams. Because, like, why should someone bother hacking your website when they can scam your parents and get more money in that way?
That's why I can't take the human out of the equation, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. But what about defense? Are there any emerging tools, especially AI supported, that have emerged?
Well, the last wave of AI that we have are basically generative AI models, including large language models, which means they are good at creating art and creating text as an art, including communication, including chatbots. I believe that none of the models that we have in the last wave here are capable of making precise, exact movements that are needed for them to become either an attacker or defender. You would need to be super precise in the output that you get from AI in order for it to be applicable to the current tools that we have, current attack tools, current defense tools. So I wouldn't worry about that too much yet. we're gonna be waiting for the next generation of AI tools, and then we can come back to that. It doesn't negate anything that's been done with machine learning in the past 30 years. There have been great advancements in both defense and attack, but it's a bit before this time.
Yeah. The way I see the usage of current tools is they can help you as an assistant. If you're already doing something, then it can help you do it slightly faster, slightly cheaper, and save some effort there. But it will not help you do things that you are not doing. Like if an organization is not doing something, then it will not magically start doing that secure thing with an AI tool.
Okay.
I fully agree with you on this one. So last year, I went to 2 major conferences for cybersecurity. We kind of call them like the Oscars of the show. It's RSA in San Francisco and Black Hat in the US. And this is really important. They each draw like 20 to 40,000 people. It's kind of like if you aren't there, then you're not on the global map, right? And I talked to all of the vendors, and most of the innovations that they were marketing to people were basically Copilot integrations that would help with the analysis of logs. So that's great if you have a massive team already, and now instead of 10 security analysts, you only need 9 or 8. But the fact is, most businesses have 0, 1 IT person doing it, or maybe they decided to hire 1 security analyst. If we're talking about real innovation, 2 things I have seen, but this is really like cutting edge and like more actually like the theoretical part is one thing is called polymorphic moving target defense. It is using AI to adapt security configuration to information that you're gaining about the threats that are trying to go after you. That's like super experimental. And then the other piece is the use of what's called swarm intelligence, not AI, to secure IoT devices. And that also is like years off. So yeah, more of the same stuff, basically.
Mm-hmm. I know you touched upon it, but maybe Peters and Kirils can also comment. Do you even see a point where AI in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years could help improve cybersecurity fields, either defense or threat-wise, could play a part? If not now, then maybe in the nearest future.
I mean, for non-technical part of it, sure. I don't see how it can replace a system administrator in a company where there's nobody there. It's not going to happen that soon. But education, you know, anything where humans are the consumers or the providers of content, specifically text content, that's there for sure. The problem is quality control. You know, I have a hunch that we're going to have runaway quality with AI tools and then generating content, you know, because it mostly works, you know, and as a business leader, you know, I follow the principle if a person on my team can do whatever I do with 80% of the quality, I delegate to them, right? But if we do that with a document created by AI, if we have 80%, even 95% precision and 5% bullshit, and at one point we will naturally stop checking because, you know, it's good enough, but it's not.
Yeah. The way I see it, you could enable less people to handle more technology. So one thing that's a problem for modern companies is that you have small teams handling very, very complex stacks of technology with very diverse tools. So you don't have like one person handling database admin, you separate person handling websites. You have a few people each doing everything. And this is where such assistants can help if you are trying to use 50 tools, some of which you have seen once, and you have to maintain them, then such agents can help you do the simple things well. It would know the basics, even if you know what to do, but you need to do it with a weird technology that everybody else knows, but not you.
And the important part is after you get the output from your AI model, you have to be the expert who then gives it to your current systems. You can't just connect it directly.
You must be able to tell that this is good enough. You have to evaluate the judge, be the judge.
All right. Moving on to talking about the existing structures and existing companies. I know all of you have worked with companies you work, but you've audited them. What would you say are the biggest, let's say, pitfalls or challenges in security and companies and maybe if you have a comment about organizations and governments, you can add that on top as well.
All right. Well,
Let's
where do I
start.
start? Where are all the challenges that we see in industry? Wow, such a
Key
Really?
ones.
I can
Key
choose
ones.
so many.
Let's not delve into all of them.
right. If you are a startup, I advise you to look up what's called the CIS Top 20 Security Controls. And you will see that almost every business is failing with the first few of them. And that is, have an inventory of your assets, of your users, and of your applications. If you can't, and this is way more difficult than it sounds, but if you can't get that right, a lot of the more advanced security measures, we don't even need to talk about them because you cannot protect what you don't know that you have. And at the end of the day, a lot of these tools, we're not talking like you want to buy this like shiny new AI solution to protect yourself because you've been told so. They need what's called a baseline. They need to learn what is good and what is wrong. If you don't have that inventory, how are you going to give them a baseline?
Yeah. In every audit, we see that the companies are failing in basics. And when we see major attacks, the root cause of these attacks is very rarely something advanced that they needed something complex to prevent. It's often, again, in 1% of time you fail at very simple things. So due diligence and putting in the labor is the obstacle. So the obstacle is not knowing what to do, but simply companies choosing or not being able to do very simple things.
As we position ourselves in the market as a premium service provider, some of the companies that do expect and do receive later on advanced attacks come to us. So it's not always the case, but I do agree that most of the companies, and we do have some really run-of-the-mill companies as our customers as well, they do fail at the basics. And I'd add something before number one on Michael's list. And before asset inventory and all that, you have to have human resources. You have to have the person that is qualified to actually work with any of that, and you should have it in-house. And I wouldn't be as optimistic, Michael. You said about 5 minutes ago that usually there is at least one IT person, even if not IT security person. Some companies don't even have that, and it's thinking about that. Yesterday, I thought it's a really good question. Why would a company not wanna protect itself? And I came up with an idea. So we have these food stands out here. You can go have lunch over there. None of them, you may have noticed, have armed guards standing by the food stand so people don't steal the food or the money or whatever. Why is that? That's because the business owners expect that in the West, including Latvia, in the Western world, you don't need that. You have some baseline level of security provided by your government so you can operate, you can do business. And we've been trying to sell security to businesses that have nothing to do with IT, and it's really, really hard. Unsuccessful for 11 years. But that's my goal. That's when I quit. When I do that, I go away. And why? Exactly because I think online, on the internet, it's the same. We're paying taxes, so the government will protect our digital infra. It will protect us on the internet. But it is a complete misconception. That's not how it works, unfortunately.
If we're talking about people resources, so I think we have to, there's like two groups of people in security. Like there are security conferences with advanced solutions to advanced problems, and the rest of the world is living below the poverty line. And so this is an effective target audience. If we talk about having people skilled in cybersecurity, the focus, in my opinion, should be not cybersecurity experts, which would be employed by this minority of companies who have teams working on security, but it would be like broader education of IT developers and IT administrators about security, because like most of the companies won't have a dedicated security team or even one person, so security will be up to CTO in a startup or up to some IT manager. And so this has to be a broad education because you won't have dedicated people. So
I really love how Estonians do it. So they have cybersecurity education in one form or another, starting from class number 1, which is I think age 7. And I think we should have that as well. Of course, it's age adjusted. The content is adjusted to how old the person is. But we should have that. And it will fix everything. It will take 15 years, but then we're good. So we do have to find some interim solutions, of course.
So also, you know, I was in Silicon Valley for 12 years, and I've worked with companies that had growth rates anywhere yearly from 300% to 1,500% roughly, anywhere in between there. And when you have these growth rates, doesn't matter how much money you have, the primary issue is you can never scale your staff, your specialty staff, to keep up with that. And that's where what both of you just right now said, so-called championship programs really helped me still have an impact and keep up with things by going in and kind of enabling the business line teams and the non-security technology teams to own their own security, kind of like a quality measure. But outside of business, we have another issue, and this goes to what Kirill said, which is essentially we need to start cyber education really early. And I've been on the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. That is a public-private working group from the US government and the Silicon Valley Talent Forum, which was a collaboration of NVIDIA, a bunch of companies, and UC Berkeley and whatnot in terms of universities. And this was specifically to tackle this, I'm going to call it lack of resources even on the market. And what we're doing is we're helping universities build better curriculums while at the same time starting to curb expectations on the business side. Because one thing that I'm seeing is a lot of businesses are looking for unicorns, candidates that don't exist or that they cannot afford. And even big businesses do that. I know an international airport, I'm not going to name it, that has been looking for a chief information security officer for almost 6 years at this point. The reason is that their list of requirements is 12 pages long, and they pay a fourth of what is justifiable pay in that region. So there's a couple of parties involved in this issue.
Fair enough. We'll touch upon the talent a bit later, but I wanted to follow up about the companies. Is that how do you, firstly, keep them liable for actually not having any security, and why should they care? Because as we talked yesterday a bit about this, well, if there's a data breach, you can just go on Twitter, apologize, and everything's fine. So why should you care? Why should you put money in this if there's no kind of penalty for it, a big one? And how could we make them companies, any company, more liable about this?
Yeah, so I can start. So my position is simple, that if nobody suffers, then it's probably okay, you know? It's not worth investing lots of money to protect something of little value, like, you know, I can leave my bag with laptop unattended in some places, and it's okay, I'm accepting that risk. But so the problem appears when companies don't take security measures because there will be a costly impact, but it will be to someone else. So that's the problem that we need to solve. We need to align the incentives, because to make these decisions appropriate, the company needs to be responsible for the damage it causes. And so what we see is that security is taken seriously by, let's say, financial industry and, like, for example, startups working with cryptocurrency, because it's their own money on the line. But for data breaches, we only recently have seen like some attempts of aligning these incentives, that if your customers suffer, that you are responsible for it. Instead of apologizing, you have to actually compensate. And that is, I think, the proper way of motivating companies to invest when it's needed to invest, and not invest when it's not needed.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm talking about. It's always, the fault is on the individual. You get to pay, and that obviously goes into education. So once we would educate people from a very young age, us as individuals would pay more attention. But at this current period, how do we make both parties kind of more responsible? Not only the individuals who understand it at the point where something has really happened and there's been an attack, but also the companies. But yeah, is there any?
Well, I will say this. On the one hand, we need accountability. And if we look at the US, the new SEC ruling starts doing that, where there's personal liability now in the room. People start taking things a little bit more serious if jail time or personal fines could be involved for having a data breach. In the EU, we have NIS2 coming up. If this is being properly enforced, then after several years and several convictions, you might hopefully see something. Now that is a very sad state of affairs, right? And, but that's reality. When I first went into this field, I was all like, oh, everybody wants to do security. Everybody is going to do the right thing, right? Yeah, well, that's not how it is. A business exists because it delivers services and products and wants to make money.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for NIS2, the current draft transposition to Latvian legislation has multiple millions of euros as the cap fine for not doing stuff according to NIS2 as it's going to be transposed. But I want to touch upon another instrument. I'm not a fan of directives and million fines. I'm just not there yet. I guess as growing older, I might find it more useful, you know, because big companies like Google, Microsoft, if something happens to them, they just, you know, they go to court and they pay the millions or even billions of euros in fine. Small companies, you know, you're not going to exist afterwards, right? It doesn't matter to any of the in the scale, which is why I'm not such a big fan of that. But one technique that we see is the customers of our customers have it in the contracts that the software has to be of good quality, and there's a separate part on cybersecurity, which is you know, contractual fines, contractual obligations, which is why most of our customers come to us for security testing, you know, because they want to provide a good product. It's not only reputation, which is manageable using some PR activities, social networks, and so on, but also actual financial obligations. And of course, if you want, as a business, to build long-term relationships with your customers, it doesn't even matter if it's in the contract or not, they're not going to come back.
I think we're also seeing in some cases companies are not making informed decisions because, how to say, the attacks are relatively rare but high impact. So, and they are hidden. Like if a company gets breached and suffers damages and or pays a large ransom, you will likely not know. And the competitors of that company might not know because there is a motivation to like hide that unless you're required by law. So people are imagining that, okay, I don't know, I sell beer online and I don't see that my industry is getting attacked, but they actually are, simply they are hiding that. So you're making a bad decision. You are thinking that the risk is lower than it is because you don't see the payments. So insurance companies do know how much the damages are. So perhaps insurance is a way to make companies honest about what the actual cost of risk is.
So we're actually doing a lot of what's called cyber threat exposure scanning for our clients. And we see a lot of stuff. And a lot of companies have been breached without ever knowing about that. And so they, like you said, they're kind of living like false security. But there's a funny story which recently happened in the United States where now that there's the reporting requirements, like after 72 hours you have to report to the SEC in this case, where threat actors actually would go in, like the bad guys, and they would contact the company and say, hey, I have your data, buy it from me. They said no or didn't respond quickly enough. And the threat actor went in and filed the notice with the SEC on behalf of the company and said, well, we would just want to let you know we had your data, and because we did it, we now reported you to the regulator, and we made them aware that you didn't file the notice because here's the entire email conversation we had with them. So this is turning into a new business as well. We'll talk about extortion. We're probably in the wrong business.
All right. Fair enough. We mentioned, you all mentioned once in a while the NIS2 regulations. Do you feel like with these regulations things are improving and will improve, or there isn't any comments on the regulations?
Well, I'm gonna finish my previous comment on regulations. So they will improve because of regulations. It is not the way I want stuff to improve. I want it to improve organically, but regulations are going to do it quicker.
My point on regulations is I want regulations that, how to say, specify what is your responsibility, but do not specify how you achieve that. I think once the government tries to write very fine, specific details on how to implement a particular technology, even with best of intentions and best of effort, even then it will get obsolete, and I would prefer regulations that says, here are your goals, here are your responsibilities, figure out and the industry can figure it out.
So regulations are definitely necessary, but I will say the preferred way is one thing that we do in the US, and that is with public-private partnerships. Don't want to self-advertise here, but the organization is like list of acronyms. We're the United States National AI and Cybersecurity Information Sharing Analysis Organization. ISAOs are a NGO type dictated or created by US Presidential Executive Order. And what we are supposed to do is to create this dialogue between government, industry, and academia to ensure regulations are sensible, national strategy is sensible, and as many stakeholders as possible were involved in this process. And I think that is one way to kind of keep things a little bit aligned and also ensure that the right people have insight into what's actually happening.
So talking about companies, so we discussed AI tools, and they are apparently not really an option, at least not yet. What would be your go-to suggestions on how a company should ensure different kind of attack prevention and ensure security?
Oh, yeah.
Well, first of all, the motivation part is really important one. If a company comes to a security specialist or just does a Google search, that's already a win, right? Because most companies don't even think that far because of the aspects I discussed earlier. But if they do want to make it better as quick as possible and cheap as possible in the first steps, probably having an expert, either internal or external expert, to actually take a look at the gaps that you have. What are you missing? What are you not seeing? Because it's completely okay and understandable that a company will work on their everyday stuff. If it's a crypto company, it will do cryptocurrency. If it's a pancake company, it will be making pancakes. They do not think about cybersecurity on a daily basis, which is why top-level management needs to take 1 hour in a year or months, even better, right? And talk to an expert and understand where they are standing and provide the next steps.
Yeah. My approach is that the level 1 of cybersecurity is not actually cybersecurity, but good IT operations. So if your IT operations are underinvested and failing and unstable and under-resourced, then you don't need to think about security, like fix your stuff so it doesn't break without the attacker, right? So that's step 1. And step number 2, probably without any specific people, is if you want to know how to handle security, you don't need to reinvent the wheel or have special skills or knowledge. I would suggest the best materials, in my perspective, for small companies come from the United Kingdom. United States has great detailed material. United Kingdom GCHQ provides recommendations on what are the steps to take that are more readable than the Latvian standards. They say similar things, but they just write it better. Just take the handbook and do the stuff. It's not much to start.
It's a bit hard to trust the organizations after the Snowden revelations, GCHQ, NSA, and of those kind. They keep releasing tools for general consumption, but you always have this in the back of your head. And cryptography, which is basis for not only cryptocurrency but also online banking, normal online banking. Some experts, including myself, have a feeling that there are repeated attempts by a government to backdoor those through an organization called the NIST. But we have to look somewhere. And as long as what you're referring to is a simple to understand, for an expert at least, list of things to do, it's safe, because the problem in Western governments is I think they have these organizations with dual goals. On one end, they want to make sure that their own infrastructure, including critical infrastructure, including commercial entities, are not hackable by the Chinese or whatever other spies. On the other hand, they want to make sure that they are able to hack whatever they want to hack. So I pivoted into a super political debate, but I do believe we need to kind of dismantle and divide those organizations into two, defense and attack.
Yeah, I think if you are at risk of being attacked by the Western intelligence agency, then you're not our target audience.
Fully agree with that. Let me give you a little bit of a metaphor that I think is helpful for people that are running startups. In San Francisco, we built the Bay Bridge, and later on we found out that one of the contractors didn't adhere to all of the standards for building the pillars, and it had to be repaired after the fact. And that costs, I think it was like $4.7 billion, that repair or something like that. That's a metaphor for the fact that if you don't consider safety in product development or security from the beginning on, putting it in place afterwards is going to cost you a lot. And I've seen it with clients all over and over. And it's not a pretty thing when they come to me and say like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I have a investor, they want to invest all of this money in here, but they're saying I have to follow like some kind of security standard or some principles. I got to be ready in 3 months. And I'm like, what have you done so far? Nothing. Okay, 3 months, not going to happen. I can negotiate a year with you maybe, but it's going to cost you quite a bit. So you have to consider this from the beginning on. But that's a chicken and the egg problem, because if you don't have the budget to afford an executive, how are you going to get strategic advice? Because one of the biggest mistakes people make, they hire a senior network engineer and then say, oh, that's my chief information security officer. That's where certain business models come into place. In the US, I don't know, we started this maybe like a decade ago, the so-called fractional executive or VC, so virtual chief information security officer, where you go to companies, I assume yours is offering similar services, I'm offering these services, and you buy an allocated budget of hours, let's say 1 hour per month, where the person, almost like an advisor on your board, sits in and gives you some feedback on where you are, and you can just slowly, I'm going to call it escalate or expand that agreement as your business grows, as you become more complex, and also build mutual trust in doing so.
And one thing that's maybe relevant for like this audience in technology entrepreneurship is that if you are offering a business-to-business service, like you may not be aware of like what are the expectations of your customers, but many of them will require you, before they will put their data on your cloud system as a service amazing solution, they will require you to follow some, let's say, security standards, which may not be, how to say, difficult to implement from the start, but if you say, I've done nothing, like how much time that will take? It will take quite some time. Yeah, 3 months is, well, it's optimistic.
Very optimistic. Look, I later, when the companies I was working with were bigger, I was saying no to business relationships as a CISO all the time because of these things, because they would not have anything in place when it comes to security certifications. So actually obtaining them, once you start looking at the global market, is really, really important because they can give you access to a market. I would say no to these all the time because I would have an executive team that was backing me up with that. The compliance department was backing me up with that. And it was necessary to satisfy the requirements coming from our investors. And I would actually really review in detail, even if they were giving me answers, I would review them. And it was really easy to find who was basically just, I'm sorry, BSing their way through to one of the security questionnaires. Because I would find stuff like, oh, our CTO receives alerts at night and responds to every incident personally. Well, okay, I'm not going to believe that. That's not giving me a trust that you are always going to be able to provide the service at the agreed upon quality.
Fair enough. I want to touch upon the talent that we talked previously. So as you mentioned, one of the good options for ensuring security would be to either external or internal security officer. In these scenarios where it's internal, what would be the go-to approach to get this talent? Or if it is external talent, knowing that cybersecurity is a fairly new field, and at least in Latvia, only in the last couple of years, there's an opportunity to study something in higher education.
Well, I think Michael's title on the screen there shows one of the solutions, which it's expensive and it's hard to get a full-time CISO for your company. As for education, we are slowly getting there. We are not the last in the world. We're in the middle. You know, Estonians are they've made their whole point of Estonia being digital and being cyber secure, which is really great. We're following, we're trailing behind, which is okay. And we do have some education programs coming up. When I was studying, there were zero cybersecurity programs, so I couldn't get one of those degrees. Now we have, you probably know better, 5, 6 on all the levels.
Well, yeah, there is a bunch of smaller programs, but there are multiple opportunities you can choose.
Including some programs. One program comes in mind that would actually likely create CISOs out of it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's like as much a matter of education as it's a matter of dedicating resources. Like, it's not something weird or unusual. I mean, a senior network engineer has most of the skills and they can quickly learn the rest. It's a matter of companies saying, hey, we want you to spend this time not on one task but on another task. And if it's a matter of company making this resource allocation.
Non-IT company is unlikely to have a network engineer. What's going to happen is they hire some company, make us a network works, go away. And then 2 years later, oh no, it's not encrypted. Everyone can access everything.
Fully agreed.
Yeah, but so then it's not a talent problem, right?
It's always a priority problem, which is what I'm pushing at. You know, we need to convince everyone here and everyone in the world that cybersecurity is needed. Governments are not gonna be in position to protect everyone, every company, every person, individual online for the next 10, 20, maybe even 50 years.
Yeah. But what was also said is that, like, you know, company comes in and builds your network. So if you outsource your stuff, that your security critical stuff, well, what is the quality of the service you're getting? And I think this is slowly improving, that people are holding their vendors to be accountable, because that's also happening, that I got damages because my vendor was negligent. So then there's motivation for that vendor to do its stuff better if you have proper service level agreements.
Oh, absolutely. I will also say, and it's important, I'm not government, right? I'm industry and NGO, but I get to talk to a lot of government agencies, and patience is running dry. That's definitely something that I'm seeing, and the reason for that is spillover effects in attacks. Number one, businesses are sitting on increasingly larger amounts of data. That data is an attractive target for the threat actors. At the same time, it is impact if a data breach happens. The second thing is we're in an age of great power competition, right? After Russia's brutal and illegal attack on Ukraine, or actually the resumption thereof, a lot of the cybercrime organizations aligned with one of the two sides. And so there's a lot more cybercrime activity. And the consequence of that is that an attack might start with a business that's small, that actually is not really doing anything important, but then kind of like spreads through the ecosystem and hits something that's very, very important. And I think governments are becoming more and more concerned about the spillover effect, and that will then lead to more enforcement and establishment of accountability.
You know, even though data and information confidentiality is certainly a major aspect, many attackers go at that. There are also quite a large group of attackers that try to disrupt your processes. If you're manufacturing anything, starting from cakes to automobiles, they will try to stop your business, and that is I think the easier sell for the C-level people in the company. You know, if you tell them, okay, there's this chance, okay, maybe 1 in 10 years, but still this chance that your business is going to be stopped for 2 days until you bring it back on, then that may motivate them to actually invest in that.
But one thing that I'm also seeing, I think, is a problem. When we talk about prioritization, cybersecurity often seems to be this giant, big problem, right? And it's kind of like, where do you start? And I think a lot of people also get just discouraged of starting that journey because, A, it's a journey, right? And I always respond to people then, and it's like, if you're running away from a bear, right, or a lion and you're that gazelle, you don't need to be the fastest gazelle. You just need not to be the slowest. Do not be the low-hanging fruit, because that's a low-cost, high return on investment target. That's how target planners think about things. What's the cost for me to go after that target? What is the benefit for that? So you just don't need to be the slowest. Perfection is not required, but you have to start and you have to do something.
Yeah, the biggest attacks are financially motivated, and they don't care if they attack you or someone else, as long as they get paid by someone. So whoever makes it inconvenient to be attacked, they'll just, oh, it's more convenient to attack someone else. Don't be that someone else.
Fair enough. Okay, to finish things off, I wanted to ask this last question, maybe talking about the good things in the future. Maybe there's some key thing that you could suggest what we should focus on, what companies or individuals should focus on to increase defense and security. Maybe each of you can name one thing that you think is, for you at least, the most important one. I know there's a lot.
Getting grilled first.
Do the basics, and I think asset inventory and accurate, up-to-date, always up-to-date people inventory is a simple thing that so many companies don't get right.
Talk to an expert at least once at your C-level. Talk to an expert and let them explain to you what you're missing. Then it's your decision, but at least you make the decision knowingly.
Yes, make an effort to understand the risk that your company is exposed to, have a conversation with an expert, then make that informed decision.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for the lovely talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.